What if I told you the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange isn't what it seems? It's part of the dark underbelly of the world, likely controlled by a communist regime. You wouldn't believe me, as they put on a good front. Well, just like the Western Front of WW1, we storm the trenches and fight for the truth, because it's time for Chico Crypto. Cryptocurrency and the world's largest exchange of it. Who could that be? Well, it doesn't take too long to figure that out. Going to CoinGecko and looking at crypto exchanges, we see this exchange makes the others look small in comparison. Binance is number one, and it's doing over 13.5 billion in 24-hour volume, while the next biggest, FTX, is doing just 2 billion. Actually, Binance has more volume than all of the top 10 exchanges combined. And if you watched my video last week uncovering the Tether cartel, you should know Binance is a part of this. If you look at a breakdown of their volume, over 70% of it is USDT. Binance is doing the same thing as FTX, but on a much larger scale. They have been facilitating the Tether cartel for years, since their creation in 2017, playing God mode, peeking at traders' leverage positions, and of course allowing spoofing on their exchange, wrecking retail traders and leverage traders alike. Just look what Willy Woo, well-known on-chain analyst, had to say about this spoofing in December of 2021. For what it's worth, this practice was rife on BitMEX, but it disappeared when the founders were arrested and a new management team came in. Comes down to whether exchanges want to clamp down on the practice. It's only part of the game. The spoofing gives it a shove. In this case, the final push was to liquidate longs. Shoving the price around is a strategic play to liquidate traders, whether it be a long squeeze or a short squeeze. Spoofs give the markets a shove, which in turn liquidates the leverage. This is a strategic play, as exchanges can see leverage traders' hands. They know their liquidation levels. They know exactly where the price needs to go to liquidate the most money. It's no secret. People have been uncovering Binance spoofing bots for ages, but the secret is out on Binance. They are facilitating more than just market manipulation. They are facilitating much more nefarious activity. Reuters put out an investigative piece 2 days ago titled "How Crypto Giant Binance Became a Hub for Hackers, Fraudsters, and Drug Traffickers." And the article states, during this period, Binance processed transactions totaling at least 2.35 billion, stemming from hacks, investment frauds, and illegal drug sales. Reuters calculated from an examination of court records, statements by law enforcement, and blockchain data compiled for the news agency by 2 blockchain analysis firms. 2 industry experts reviewed the calculation and agreed with the estimate. Drug trafficking. Now, if you didn't know, America is having a deadly opioid epidemic that makes what happened in the early 90s and early 2000s with OxyContin look like child's play. Fentanyl is flooding the US and killing Americans like never before. As we can see from this graph, over 91,000 people OD'd in 2020 on opioids, compared with under 20,000 in 1999. Now, where is this deadly opioid fentanyl coming from? It's coming from Chinese labs. From this U.S. Treasury Department press release, Treasury targets Chinese persons involved with drug trafficking organization moving fentanyl. We can get a clear picture of what goes on. The article states, today, the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control designated 4 individuals and 1 entity pursuant to the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. The 4 individuals were designated for providing support to the Zhang Drug Trafficking Organization, DTO, which is run by Chinese synthetic opioid trafficker Fu Zhang. How did they process their funds? Well, the article says the Zhang DTO laundered its drug proceeds in part by using digital currency such as Bitcoin, and transmitted drug proceeds into and out of bank accounts in China and Hong Kong, and bypassed currency restrictions and reporting requirements. They laundered with Bitcoin and other digital currencies. I can guarantee you one of the others was Tether USDT. Now, this flooding of deadly drugas from China goes unchecked by the CCP and the PRC, aka the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China. These two terms are used interchangeably to describe the Chinese political region. The Republicans, they know this, as their Foreign Affairs Committee has put out a campaign titled CC Party's Over, with the aim of countering China's corrupt, deceptive influence around the world. Their mission statement says, under the totalitarian leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, China has become the United States' strategic adversary and most consequential foreign policy challenge of this century. Complacency towards China has allowed the CCP's quest for dominance and deceptive behavior to go largely unchecked on the world stage for far too long. This campaign will help educate the American public and others about the CCP's threat to our values and interests across various domains, including security, academia, commerce, technology, and governance. Now, guess what is one of the key points in addressing the threat of the CCP? Holding the PRC, the People's Republic of China, accountable for poisoning America with fentanyl. So, is Binance connected and possibly controlled by the CCP? Well, there are some proponents who think that is true. Guo Wengui, aka Miles Guo, is an exiled Chinese billionaire businessman who became a political activist and controls Beijing Zenith Holdings. At the peak of his career, he was the 73rd richest person in China, although he has turned against his former country. Since the beginning of 2017, Guo has been in a self-imposed exile in New York City, where he has continued to conduct a political agenda to bring attention to the corruption in the Chinese political system. Let's just now hear what Miles Guo had to say just last month regarding Binance.
这一看就是共产党的这个影子，就像那个币安一样。请问币安赵长鹏办公室在哪儿啊？你们知道吗？他住哪儿你知道吗？赵长鹏是公开在任何地方说，我是没有办公室固定地址的，我也没有固定的家庭住址。他在今年这2个月以前，他是没有任何执照，他完全是非法的。一个完全没有办公室，一个没有固定家庭住址，没有执照的人，赵长鹏，他能5000万人注册也好，3000万注，1000万有效户也好，咱不说，你去想想，他突然哪天消失了，你上哪找他去？那你请问，你们知道七哥住哪儿吧？你知道七哥是在哪儿吧？喜兰楚你们知道在哪儿吧？这是多大的不同呢？一个完全不承担法律责任，没有任何合法性，一个完全跟共产党勾兑的人，就被几千万人相信。
And he continues saying this.
你看看赵长鹏的币安啥时候开始的？都是在3、4年前同时间共产党布的局。
So Miles Guo, who has been exposing the CCP for years, thinks Binance is controlled by them, laid out by the CCP years ago when they were incepted. So if you think Binance still doesn't have connections to China, let me just blow your mind. Going to a Helen Hai's LinkedIn, we can see she is high up in the rankings of Binance. She is the leader of the Binance charity. She is the head of global fiat exchange for Binance and the head of NFT and fan tokens. But she is also Goodwill Ambassador for UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. I wonder for which country? Well, as we can see from the World Economic Forum highlight on her, it's for the China Regional Office, specifically for industrialization in Africa. Now, if you didn't know, China is using Africa to make the products and goods needed to bolster not only their growing population, but for ours here in the US. A Peter Hitchens put out this article, How China Has Created a New Slave Empire in Africa. And the article states, out of desperation, much of the continent is selling itself into a new era of corruption and virtual slavery as China seeks to buy up all the metals, minerals, and oil she can lay her hands on. Copper for electric and telephone cables, cobalt for mobile phones and jet engines, the basic raw materials of modern life. Many perish as their primitive minds collapse on them or are horribly injured without hope of medical treatment. Many are little more than children. On a good day, they may earn $3, which just supports a meager existence in diseased, malarial slums. And Peter got to interview an opposition political opponent in Zambia, Michael Sata, and this is what was said. Sata has challenged China's plans to invest in Zambia and is publicly suspicious of them. At elections 2 years ago, the Chinese were widely believed to have privately threatened to pull out of the country if he won, and to have helped the government parties win. Now the leader of the Patriotic Front, Sata, with a respectable chance of winning a presidential election set for the end of October, he says, the Chinese are not here as investors, they are here as invaders. So, did Helen Hai have deals in Africa? Of course she did. I actually covered this all the way back in March of 2019. Let's just play a clip. Helen presided over the Wuhan factories in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia from 2012 to 2013. CNN did a special report on the new factory and their efforts of industrialization in the region to provide jobs for just 600 people.
This is my shoe factory in Ethiopia. We produce 2,000 pairs of shoes every day.
Helen was in charge of operations. She made a military-like environment to enforce discipline among workers. The workers were marched to and from their shifts, dressed in matching suits. This was meant to foster an environment of teamwork and unity, much like the military. No questions, no thinking for yourself, just work. Then there is this Breaker Mag article from Core & Faith titled Binance's new charity head ran a factory where workers made less than $50 per month. The article states, before founding her own company, Hai worked for a Chinese shoe manufacturer, Wuhan Group, which operates a large factory in an industrial zone outside Addis Ababa and which has been criticized for the conditions it imposes on employees in both China and Ethiopia. Last year, Wuhan Group made headlines when a Chinese activist was arrested after going undercover to investigate labor abuses at a factory in China. There are suggestions that some of the same conditions were present in the Ethiopian factory which Helen Hai set up. In a video news segment from 2012, Hai discusses Wuhan Group's factory in Addis Ababa. She explains that local workers will often spend all of their month's wages within 2 weeks of getting paid. This is typical lack of discipline, she says. In China, over the years, we've developed remedies to overcome this. In 2012, a report from a French news station found that workers in the Wuhan factory in Ethiopia made the equivalent of around $45 per month, making it difficult for them to cover living costs in the capital. In the news broadcast, the sum was described as around 10% of what a Chinese worker would make for the same job. The CCP is taking over Africa. The CCP is looking to take over the world. And in my opinion, they are infiltrating the US through Binance. Per example, Forbes. Cheers, viewers. I'll see you next time.